All right.
Yeah,
So, welcome to the Stoked 20-minute, 20 interviews podcast. I have Steve and Doren from Vans here. How you doing, Steve?
doing great. Thank you, Steve.
Hey, so Vans has been a supporter of Stoked for many years. Quickly, could you take us back to the early days? What was the Vans original vision when your family started the company?
Yeah, no, just so you know, we're from the East Coast, from Boston. And my dad worked for 20 years in Boston making shoes for a company called Randolph Rubber Company. And he was 16 years old. He left school in ninth grade. He didn't think he was learning anything. He went to work at a shoe factory. And then over the next 20 years, he became lots of stories behind it. He was an executive vice president, and that company asked him to move to California with his family because they had a factory they bought in Garden Grove, California, that was losing $6 million a year. So my dad, my uncle Jim, and Gordon Lee moved from Boston out to California in 1963. The very end of that, 1964, our family moved out there. My dad, in about 8 months to 10 months, straightened that factory out where it was actually being more profitable than the East Coast factory. And then he had a disagreement with the owner, and my dad quit. So my dad's got 5 kids, a brand new house in Costa Mesa, California, only went to ninth grade and no job. So there was a gentleman my dad worked with from Japan. His name was Serge Delia. Serge called their factory up in Garden Grove and says, "Can I speak to Paul Van Doren?" And they said, "No, he doesn't work here anymore." So Serge called my dad's house. He said, "Paul, what's up?" He says, "You got any ideas?" My dad said, "Yes. I'd like to build my own factory, and I'd like to make the shoes and put them in my own stores, which nobody had done at that time." So Serge sent a plane ticket to my dad to fly to Kobe, Japan, and tell him about his ideas. Serge at that time said, "Okay, I like it." But he really liked my dad a lot, and he invested some money so my dad could go and start the Van Doren Rubber Company. So in 1965, the whole year, Jimmy Gordy and my dad were the partners. Serge was a silent partner, and they built a factory that had only been like three since 1900, going to vulcanized manufacturing of shoes. So they opened the factory up, opened the first store in Costa Mesa, and that first year, putting stores in because nobody knew who Vans were. We would always say sneakers, being from the East Coast. In California, they called it tennis shoes. And so the company started in '66, grew to the mid '70s, and all of a sudden, we finally, after 9 years or so, started getting some purpose because of skaters and surfers. At the very first, liked the shoes because my dad, when he built our first product, he knew they had to make the sole thicker, use pure crepe rubber. The waffle design on the bottom was something that my uncle had made on his lathe at his house. And it was a unique thing, but it actually worked good for gripping the skateboard. So in the mid '70s, people like Tony Alva, Stacy Peralta, the people from Dogtown era Zephyr team started wearing the shoes. Tony would go into our store with his navy blue shoes, and he found out if the shoes in those days, again, this is 9 years later, when it first came out, Authentics were $4.49. And by mid '70s, they were maybe $8. So Tony found out if he wore out one shoe way faster than another because the way he skateboarded, he could buy one shoe for $4.
Yeah.
So and then he says, "I'll take a red one on my left foot," let's say. And so when eventually we heard about this, we started giving Tony and Stacy shoes. And the very first person we ever paid to wear shoes was 1976, which was the first off the wall skateboard shoe. We made it navy blue, red, navy blue, because Tony having a blue one on one foot and a red one on the other. And the word off the wall came because Tony was starting to come off the wall in the pools. A cousin of mine, a nephew, no, cousin of mine actually took that design, the off the wall kind of, we call it the turtle. And it was kind of punk rock was coming out in those days. My cousin Mark Van Doren was 13 years old, and he spray painted that outline on the bottom of his skateboard. And my uncle Jim says, "What's that?" He says, "I designed this." So we had just heard about Off the Wall. We put it inside there, and boom, that's how the Off the Wall heel label came out 1976. The actual was March 18th, 1976, because I got married on March 6th. I went to Hawaii for my honeymoon. I had to be back because we were launching the first skate shoe. So those days from the next 50 years, I had homage for skateboarders, surfers, BMXers, snowboarders, because they gave Vans purpose. We weren't football, basketball, baseball, hockey. We were surfing, skateboarding because they brought us into their community, their family and stuff.
That's incredible. And what was the story behind becoming more of a culture and a lifestyle? Like, what was it about the purpose? Could you talk about a little bit more about the purpose that you speak of?
Sure. Yep. So, the purpose again, my dad had three values. One was that make a great product, really great quality. Um, and that's what they always stressed at. The second one was a value. And my dad, at the first, 10 years, 15 years of company, was just company owned stores. So it was Van's destination. So you got a value because it was made in our factory, sold through our own stores. Eventually, when Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out of the off the wall, more people knew about the brand. And the purpose was always to make a good quality shoe. The second one was a value. And the third one was superior customer service. No matter if it was through our own stores or somebody that you dealt with, or we were buying fabric or rubber or whatever, our purpose always was to make sure that you had superior customer service. And today, 59 years later, we still, in the world of every shoe that we sell, 50% of the places that people buy our shoes are from a Vans store. Doesn't matter if it's Shanghai, if it's down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, if it's in New York City, or down in Mexico City. So we're real proud of that. We love our wholesale customers, and now the last so many years with the internet. But purpose was always to stick to what our guns were, stick to who really made us something, which was to make sure, and no matter what we do, if you have a pyramid, the top is always skateboarding. Okay. And then from there will be action sports with skateboarding. Everything has to bounce off that. What would, Anthony Van Egan think of this, or Current Caples think of this, or Steve Caballero think of this, or in surfing, if it happened to be Joel Tudor for longboarding, or it happened to be one of our great Mikey February surfers and stuff. How do they tie into? We got to make sure our purpose is for that. But it was always to embody, taking care of people. My dad always said, Vans was never a brand to wave the flag around. It was always about the people. He always told me we have a people company that makes shoes, and today apparel also.
That's great. That's great. And you've always been the heart of the Vans brand, showing up at events, cooking, connecting with the community. And how did you start finding your place at Vans?
Yeah, it's always been something since I was got married. I said in 1976. My uncle Jim was taking over retail. We had about 50 or 60 stores, and I asked if I could work in retail with him. And so I was in charge of half the store. So it was always about going and being accessible. And growing up from 20 years old to now almost 70 was being accessible. It really started back in 31 years ago when we came out with our snowboard boots. I was at a snowboard demo. I hired young people. I didn't know anything about bindings and screwing things on and getting all this. So I was out there again in California now most of my life. I was freezing. It was snow out there. And so I got a grill. In skateboarding, I had hired Everett Rosecrans to be our team manager in 77. So over the next, 10, 15 years, he was the team manager. Snowboarding was a new thing. So I went out and I'm looking, and in skateboarding, you can see who the riders are. In snowboarding, they got goggles, beanies, jackets, hoods, so I'd be writing down, green jacket, gray pants. But I figured, hey, if I cook, they have to take that off. I know who they are. So all of a sudden, and I was keeping warm too. Okay. So I'm making quesadillas, some hot dogs, some hamburgers, handing them out. They take it off. Oh, you're Sean White. Oh, and that's how I started to find our snowboard, team, working with people that I would then hire that were in snowboarding and knew the players in the game there and stuff. But it was always, doesn't matter if it was the Vans Warped Tour, which I did for 24 years, being on a bus, traveling around the country, getting to know musicians. I never wanted to go, hey, it's a Vans Warped Tour, you got to wear our shoes. That'd be lame. So I would just lay out on rehearsal day, ready to kick off a 40 city tour. I'd lay out a couple thousand pair of shoes. And if you want to come get some shoes, bands, grab it. But I'll always give you some socks. I'll always give you a clean t-shirt. You can come by my booth anytime and get free shirts, free socks. And so some guys like, Fat Mike from NoFX, he had like these wild, crazy airwalks on that would look like tennis balls. And so after a few weeks and stuff, I see him wearing some Vans socks with his shoes and stuff. I met his wife one time, so I passed on some shoes to her, and he goes, "I see how you're working here." So it was always, making sure if catering sucked, then hey, I'll call up and order 50 pizzas and give it to the different buses. When we're in Boston, because it's my hometown, I always drove in for 24 years to downtown Boston to Hook's Lobster House and buy 150 lobsters and have them cooked up to give to the stage managers and the bands at nighttime. It was just something that my passion for meeting people. And, if it happens to be from the Vans Triple Crown of surfing in Hawaii, being over there, getting to know the surfers, and if the surf's not up, then there's a golf day or something. So support them in any way we could. Or if it happens to be the Vans Park series that we started, and we built skate parks in Malmo, Sweden, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, in Montreal, in Paris, France, in Salt Lake City, and leave them for the community. It's not something that we might have been through 7 or 8 presidents in the whole time after my dad. But I learned in the early days, don't be president, because if something slows down, the first person's head is the president that gets cut off.
Yeah, yeah.
Was not our company. My dad sold it back in the late 1988, 89. And from that point forward, we've had new presidents and stuff. But VF acquired us in 2004, which they own, like, from North Face to Timberland to bag companies, Vans and stuff like this here. They do the support on the back end, but we really have to keep our culture and keep it going from our Vans perspective and stuff, the pinnacle for North Face is not skaters. It's going to be mountain climbers,
For sure.
cold weather, things like that there.
For sure.
Always made sure that, I always look at passion and pride. I learned one thing from my dad. Every company goes ups and downs, and over 60 years, we've had ups and downs. But one thing is back in 84, we were forced to go into Chapter 11. My uncle had taken over for about 3 years, very talented person. But what happened, he wanted to be like the new companies that were out there leading the way in shoes. He wanted to make athletic shoes. So we made running shoes, basketball, racquetball, breakdancing, all kinds of shoes, wrestling shoes, boxing shoes. And people knew us for being Vans, but didn't know the athletics, so they weren't selling. We owed about $12 million to Bank Security Pacific, and they came in, called the note, and they wanted to liquidate us. I actually was sitting in my desk here. I'll shine it over there. A wooden cadenza has a little tag on it right there. When we were in Chapter 11, the bank came in and labeled everything that was assets, and they were going to sell it all. But the courts protect you from that. So my dad said, I have a plan. They said, you can get out of Chapter 11 if you come up with 25 cents on the dollar. So give us $4 million and you're out. My dad says, no, I owe the bank, or I owe people that make the rubber or the canvas. I owe you 100 cents on the dollar. I'm going to do that. I need 3 years. And the courts protect you. Well, my dad went through the 3 years. Paid everybody off 100 cents on the dollar. So if I tell anybody that works in 2025 why they have a job here, it's because of my dad's integrity. Integrity has a lot to do with what you are and who you are and where you come from. No matter how hard things get, if you have a strong purpose, and that's what's embedded in me, embedded in my daughter, that doesn't matter how hard you get hit, it's how you can stand back up and keep coming forward. And having integrity to make sure that I owe you money, I'll pay you back. And so that was a story that I don't mind ever telling, because I'm super proud of my father and his partners and when they started. And I've got to be around for 59 years in Vans.
That's really
or Phil's not vacation on.
I've been grinding it out. I stepped away from Stoked for 3 years, and then now I'm back. I feel like there's more, like when I left, post COVID, young people, it's not like the lives of young people gotten better. It's actually gotten like worse, right? And for me, like you've always supported, young athletes and artists and creators before they were famous. Like, what was the philosophy around nurturing talent?
It's always been trying to pick the right people. It's not that we didn't want to support everyone, but when we do pick people, if it happens to be Zion Wright and we got to meet him and see his personality, and going and seeing somebody like Kern Caples when he's 11 or 12 years old, and now he's 28, you know, and, but Steve Caballero being with us, since 1988, he might have wore the shoes before then, but we made his shoe in those days. Tony Alva, back from the 70s. And the first person we ever paid to wear our shoes was Stacy Peralta, because Tony was such a wild card. Today you might see him, wearing your shoes, and tomorrow somebody else's. But Tony's always been a person. As I turned 70, Tony just turned 68. And he still surfs like 4 days a week, and he skates. I just went on a trip with Christian Assoy. I took him to Brazil with me about 5 weeks ago. And Robert Vargas, who's a really cool artist in Los Angeles that paints these giant buildings with like Otani on them. And Robert just got back from 3 weeks in Japan. And when I travel on trips, I love taking our legends with us. It could be Ray Barbie. So it's if I have Ray with me, I've got an artist plus a skater. I have Robert with me, I have I have an artist. If I have Christian with me, I've got a skater. Stevie with me, he'll paint, he'll, ride motorcycles, he'll skateboard, and it doesn't matter if it's street or vert or whatever and stuff. So well-rounded, Jeff Rowley, from Lizzie Amato to, all of our people. I think you give them respect, not asking them. If I do something 10 times with somebody and they ask me to do, then I ask them to do one, they'll do it. So it's really kind of, hopefully we have team managers that take care of the people when they're out there and care about them, whatever their lives are and stuff. But we've had riders for a long time in all different sports, from surfing all the way through to skateboard, BMX. Vans Warped Tour, again, getting to know what musicians do and what they go through. In 24 years of the Vans Warped Tour, I learned a lot. We dropped the mic in 2019, and we have not had it for 5 years. Well, Insomniac reached out to me and Kevin Lyman about a year ago and said, we'd like to bring the Vans Warped Tour back, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of expense, and we might have not had it right now. And they said, so we did. We're going to sell 120,000 tickets, 40,000 in DC in June, 40,000 in Long Beach, and 40,000 in Orlando coming up in 4 weeks. The first hour, 100,000 tickets were sold back last November, but not saying any bands. So they upped it. So it was like 55,000 in Washington, D.C. 85,000 both days, 85,000 Saturday, 85,000 Sunday, Long Beach. And now we're going to Orlando. It's 80,000 that are sold out. We bring in 65 and have all our skaters come out, girls and guys, as well as some BMXers. But that shows the pattern that people had for Warped. The Vans Warped Tour was a because it's the lowest price. Again, it's 2 days and it's like $140. Where my daughter Christy, she's not in the room right now, but for her birthday, for Christmas, she wanted to go and see Gwen Stefani's going to play in Vegas. So she said, "Hey, Dad, here's a present you can get me." So that was the day she's playing in the Sphere in Las Vegas in my gal. So she was online right at 10 o'clock, and all of a sudden, it was like 29,000 people that wanted to get tickets. So somehow she got through and got it. So Dad gave her a credit card so he could, so I'm already working on trying to design some shoes, because that's like her favorite person.
That's great.
And so I'm going to design some shoes with No Doubt and the Sphere on it, and make them for her, and her girlfriend are going to go to Las Vegas. And I'll prepare for Gwen and her size, as I had done. That's great. 4 years ago, Christy went and saw her in Vegas, and I made some shoes with her album on it, and I got her a backstage thing so she could go meet her and stuff.
Absolutely. How do you see that connection between mentorship and culture building?
You got to spend time and be in places that your customers are. Yep. I think it's super important. And if you make the athletes accessible, and that's the thing about the Tony Hawks and Tony Alvas and Caballeros, Hassoys, and, many of the famous skaters spent the time traveling in those vans all over the country, all over the world. With the young people today, they need to get out touring a lot more and stuff. Because if I have TA and Christian in the Vans motorhome, and I've got 2 young skaters, they tell their story. I mean, they've had highs, the biggest in the world. They've had those. Christian's now sober for 25 years, Tony 19 years, telling the story about, in prison. And I just keep telling them, hey, tell them about this because I've heard the stories before. And every time I learn new things about their ups and downs with, alcohol or drugs and many other things. But I love putting the older athletes with the younger ones and stuff. Myself, it's a matter of set an example. We're at a party, we got 1,000 people, and at the end of the night, it looks like a big mess before everybody's gone. So me and Christy start grabbing trash and throwing it in and think, hey, jump in. So I see, I traveled to go to the AV 2.0 around the world last year and different cities, Shanghai, South Korea, Tokyo, and Milan. And we're hanging out and we're with the team. I was just up in the Montreal for the Dime event that's up there. And so you get to be there with them, have some pizza, have some food with them and stuff, and just getting to share stories. I'm always just sharing stories and stuff. But if you get a chance to be at an event, see them perform, just saw Pedro Barros in Brazil when we were out there and stuff. They see how you care about things and care about people. And I never try to do anything more than somebody would do to me. So just trying to pass on knowledge and experience with them and let them be part of it. Many times it could be through an amateur event or going out to, let's say, Woodward last year. We drove and I had Cab, I had Soy, and I had Ray Barbie with me at Camp Woodward. And again, here they are, interacting with kids, 5 reviews each day.
You remember the free time how
Doing art with them as well as doing music with them, doing skateboarding or bikes.
Yeah, it was in New York. Yeah. I think it might. Do you remember?
I think that you were in New York and we're in Chicago. I think you were in New York at that time, maybe. And I'm trying to remember our marketing person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't remember who the first person was and stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we met. And then again getting involved in hearing what great things you were doing with young people. And that's always to my heart.
Yeah.
I've met many people. This guy named Scott that started Cambodia Children's Fund. It was about the same time he moved over there and what he was giving back, and it was all from his heart. And the same thing with Dope, it was all from your heart. It was what we're doing. I think Michael Chunau, we had the House of Beans in
And there was
in Brooklyn. That's probably the first time you probably met and stuff. Chopper Dave was in charge of that over there, and Michael owned the meatball shop, and I would cater from him. I found out passion, I think through you to him, that he had in the wintertime, and he was having a fundraiser to get jackets. So he actually slept on the street and then in the morning got people involved. And so Chopper then said, okay, because it was the House of Fans was private, nobody would come skate there, just you had to be invited. He said, hey, bring a jacket to skate here. We raised like 300 and some jackets that they brought to shelters and stuff.
What's that about a mission combining
that I remember?
Sports?
It was tied in with you somehow.
What do you think stood out
in
your eyes
about what you guys were doing?
Yeah.
We were doing some small things that we were working with A Skate for autistic kids.
Yeah.
And you were using action sports tying into just regular, hey, how do I learn how to be a better person? How do I help out be there? Yeah, the mentoring thing. And both seem to work together. I think that, you find a common denominator. Hey, I like to, but all of a sudden I'm learning how to be a better person, how to help other people.
Yeah.
And how do you learning lessons that
like the partnership was
just way to meet young people.
Really,
that's why I took
fans really sort of made an impact on us. Like, how do you think partnerships with Vans and nonprofits really help shape the broader action sports and youth community?
Yeah, again, you try to be, we never were the biggest company, but we are. But, in the early days, you had to work harder when you were smaller and do grassroots things. And it always fit into we never had giant budgets in the early days at all for marketing. So you had to learn how to, utilize whatever you could get your hands on, but it was more out just being with them. I'm working with a young person today, his name Toby, a Crenshaw Skate Club. And so I'm actually designing a shoe. He just graduated from Stanford in June. He's had a company going for about 7 years, Me, Pete, Christy, we all went up to Crenshaw last Christmas and brought in like 100 decks, 100 pair of shoes, maybe 50 completes, and just got to meet all of the kids up in the neighborhood where he was from and stuff. And so it's given back. We were down at the food bank 2 weeks ago. The company tries to get people to get volunteer hours for everybody to go do. So I went down there and had a great time. I'm Mr. Chicken McNugget things now because of my job was to open these boxes up with chicken nuggets in and put a stamp thing on and make sure there was no rips and it was frozen. And so, just going and seeing what people do in order to help food banks and stuff. The same thing as last weekend, my team, I didn't go on Saturday, went up to Beaverson Pack, has a foundation that raises money for people in need. So we sent up 3 pallets of clothing and shoes, maybe 2,000 unit, as they brought in 8 or 10,000 people came to the concert, but about 4,000 they brought in, and they got to go get some shoes and get some clothing and things. We had our shoe car to do a photo thing in front of it. And then we had a tent where they gave away small things, could be from coasters to pins to other things, just welcome people. Snoop Dogg and a bunch of entertainers were supporting Anderson Paak. We did a sponsorship with him for like 3 years, but the last 2 years we haven't. There was just kind of a time thing, but he still wears the brand. So if he's going to do something, we're going to go support it. I got a launch with
Amazing.
the drummer from Blink-182, Travis Barker. So I've been working with Travis for about a year. He designed a shoe and we're ready to launch it on the 23rd of this month. So he has a thing called Run Travis Run. So it's a 5K. So since he's going to be part of our family, we want to go, we have nothing to do with running except that we're going to be there, give out some things, and we make waffles on the stick. So Chicago is about a month and a half ago. I went out to Palm Springs 2 weeks ago, and Pete and the gang are going out to, it's in Las Vegas this weekend, and the last one's in Santa Monica. So getting involved.
So,
Just trying to
is celebrating 20
times
years
if money's not there.
or launching a new
Please be my support and give
Stoked 2.0
their
to grow mentoring. We're like really more leaning into mentoring. When you hear that, like mentoring across the country, just like mentoring is the foundation, right? Like action sports is one of the things that we do, but really it's about having those, intergenerational relationships. When you hear that, what comes to mind?
As you said, building legacies and stuff. To me, it's a kindness. It's reaching out, getting out of your comfort zone and trying to go into a new area that you can pass on some of your pride and passion to other people and get them to
Can you hear me?
help them on their way. And, if somebody asks me, because again, being around somewhere, it's hard work. Okay, you might as well have people that you like and love around you. And that's what I always see from people that I run across and that reach out to me. And see if it was just, a month ago, we were out to Redmond's. And it was just an organization they were going to buy. They bought 212 pair of shoes. And they used to buy them for $60. And the place they bought them from, that skate shop closed down. And I said, well, I'll get them to you for $40. And when I went, I brought a bunch of free things to go along, socks with it, as well as other things.
Yeah, you're back. All right. I have 2 more questions. Yeah.
I'm at Hog.
What advice would you give to other brands or leaders who want to have the kind of long-term impact?
I saw it go off, so I figured I'd reload. Stick to your priorities. How'd you get here? Don't go change that. I have this problem all the time. We have a new president. She started about a year ago. Her name's Sun. She was with Lululemon for about 8 years. And I really enjoy working with her and stuff. And sometimes we've had marketing VPs over the last 6 years. They're about here 2 years and then they move on because they really didn't get it. They want to put in what they think. We're going to go all fashioned like we did the last couple of years, big giant things in Milan or Paris. And, that's not Vans. I'd rather have a freaking great skate or surf or snow event, and get the customers that really appreciate it versus some fashion thing. You can't make fashion happen. You've got to supply things that people think are cool. And that's what happens. That's why I'm a little tied up today with all the phones with influencers and stuff like that there. To me, it's a lot of talk and everything else. And just because I'm here looking cool. You really need somebody that really wants to wear your brand. And so in order to do that, if they do things like bring back the Vans Warped Tour, where, this year we're going to have over 200,000 people, that enjoy a concert at $140 for 2 days versus 800. Like that's what I had to pay for Christy for her seat with Gwen Stefani. And do things that people like and bring in the communities that are around you. For sure. Art community, music community.
What
That's just
so just
but be real.
if you could just give a
Surround
shout
yourself with
out,
good
like
people.
congrats to Stoke for 20 years of mentoring youth and building community through action sports. Do you mind just giving a shout out?
Sure. Anyway, this is Steve Van Doren. I'd like to give a shout out. Amazing 20 years for Stoked and for all the work that they've done in the past and they're going to do in the future for mentoring. And, just I look at it as a culturing human being.
And if someone's listening who wants to support them,
to people,
well, how do you see
it and how they were a future
you part of Stoke?
mentor others. I think, being part of Stoked in the future, from what I've seen for the last 20 years and stuff, is just real care about people. And passing it on makes you feel better, makes you more of a human being yourself and stuff because of what you can pass on and teach. Hopefully they'll pass on and teach and learn for the people of today that it just the returning your roles of every kids and that'll be a better world.
Your support. Awesome. All right.
I thank you very much. I always enjoyed hearing from you, Steve. But hopefully when you get to California, we can say hello.